Weapon reskins in TF2. I've already made this joke. Forsaken has skins. The characters have skins, and intentionally or not, some of the skins do give you a slight advantage or disadvantage compared to if you were using that character's default skin. This isn't the first video I made on this topic, but I wanted to make another one as A, the first video was kinda dog shit, and B, a lot more skins have been added since I made it. So I'll cover any skins that I mentioned in that video here, and if I didn't cover any that were in that video, it was either because my criteria changed and I didn't think it was notable enough to mention anymore, or it got fixed. So it's not really necessary to watch that first video. And also, something I should probably note, because a lot of you seem to call me a tryhard in the first video. None of this really matters in the end. Even the quote-unquote noticeable advantages are minor at most. And at the end of the day, this is just an analysis on the skins, because I think it's pretty fun to analyze these things. So yeah, don't take it too seriously. I don't actually care if any of these skins are pay to win or pay to lose. It's just something I like to look into. I think it's neat. I'll also be avoiding skins that are easier or harder to see if it's not really a significant thing. So I will be including things that have significant protrusions, for example wings or like tentacles. However, the exception to that will be hats, as it is hard to judge how tall a hat has to be pay to lose. And also, I want to make this video slightly less painful to make. It's already going to take a while, so... Or if it's just decently significant in another way, for example, the skins that glow, or the characters that have a way to get invisibility. For those, I will be counting skins that make them significantly easier or harder to see. Otherwise, it's just too hard to tell when to draw the line, so. Also, because I know there's at least one of you that's going to be commenting about it, I don't care if you'd rather get chased than your supports. If something makes you easier to see, I'm counting it as pay to lose. So, shut up. Also, if you're one of those people that are gonna be like, actually, you don't pay for milestone and achievement skins, I'm going to... Now, just to provide a visual, I'll rank the skins on a tier list based on how pay to win or pay to lose I think they are. So the tiers I have here are noticeably pay to win, slightly pay to win, side grade, slightly pay to lose, noticeably pay to lose, and actively cucking yourself. Most of these are self-explanatory, but there are some things I should probably clear up about two of the tiers. Side grade is for skins that have something that give you an advantage as well as something that give you a disadvantage. And then actively cucking yourself is only for the really extreme cases. Like, these skins are seriously fucking you over. So sorry for yapping so much, but the last time I made this video I got a bunch of stupid comments and I want to avoid as many of those as possible. And if you want to complain about the intro taking too long, you're part of the problem. Let's start off with Jason skins. Alfred Drevis, Delirious, White Pumpkin, and Insane Streamer all have voice lines. This makes them easier to hear, but they also give you an audio cue of when they're using abilities such as Behead, so you can react without even looking at them. Ultimately, this barely even matters, as there's a good chance Behead will hit you anyway, as it's more of something you have to predict rather than just react to. Slightly pay to lose for those four skins. Now, Barber right now is straight up unusable, as if you cancel out of Raging Pace early, you are still stuck with the inability to sprint and the faster walk speed. You just can't sprint. You have to let Raging Pace end naturally every time. Barber Jason is, because of that and its bugs right now, it is the first skin that is going in actively cucking yourself. Deep Sleep Jason's teddy bear head hides the glowing eye from Raging Pace, which doesn't really do anything because you can still see the animation, but you know. Combat Initiation Jason has a lot more obvious visual and audio cues for Raging Pace. Slightly pay to lose. Pursuer has custom animations which make it harder to tell when he's using abilities, especially Behead. Now, if it was just this, I'd probably make the case for slightly pay to win, but Pursuer also has a slightly faster kill animation, and that I'd say matters a lot. It matters enough for it to go into noticeably pay to win. Now, Subject Zero has unique gashing wound animations, which also gives it unique hitboxes, which I think they tried to mitigate now, because before it used to be just the first hit, and then all 4 consecutive hits were at the end. But now it's like 1 hit and then 2 hits, and then there's just 3 hits right at the end. Now, if it was the first version, I would probably put noticeably pay to win, as it does let you take advantage of noobs using slate skin a lot easier, and it can also throw off guests sometimes, but now it's basically just the default gashing wound hit time, so it goes into slightly pay to win. And last for Jason, Milestone 3, Milestone 4, and VIP all have a longer kill animation, and Milestone 3 and 4 have a currently bugged layer 1 for their terror radius, and it makes it completely silent, which makes it easier to track their footsteps. And Milestone 4 also has a slight trailing particle effect of the embers on top of that. Most of those don't matter, but the longer kill animation is, I'd say, pretty significant. So they go into noticeably pay to lose. Weirdly, Strict doesn't have voice lines, meaning you lack the audio cues for all of his abilities. Savior is mostly the same case, except he has a voice line for pizza delivery. Now, I'd say this is fairly significant, because not only is it kind of easy to miss the Corrupt Nature audio cue, but Walk Speed Override has pretty much no audio cue other than the voice line. So I'd say it's pretty significant. Now, Masked Man also has no voice lines. However, it has a sound cue for Walk Speed Override, and it makes Corrupt Nature easier to hear. And the Corrupt Nature hit itself is also easier to see, but slightly smaller than the actual hitbox. So, because there's advantages and disadvantages to using the skin, it's the first one to go into side grade. N1GH7M4R33, or Nightmare if you're not a freak, has big ass tentacles on its back, which protrude pretty far, so you can see them more easily through walls and stuff. We're not even past the second character, and I'm running out of things to say. This is amazing. Now, Cupcakes and Mafioso's pizza delivery minions, while they don't take a genius to figure out they're not exactly survivors, they could take you slightly longer to process that you should be staying away from them than normal. Now, I promise you this matters more often than you think. And Mafioso also has a faster kill animation. So Cupcakes goes into slightly, but Mafioso with the faster kill animation, I think that is pretty significant. So it goes into noticeably. One more time, glows. Milestone 3 and Milestone 4 have effects and accessories that make it slightly harder to see people near you, which this matters a lot when you're trying to aim Corrupt Nature in, like, Shift Lock, for example. Also, the elephant in the room, the much longer kill animation, especially if you killed a 007. If you accidentally kill a clone, you just lose. So, they both go into noticeably pay to lose. Now for John Doe, it's much easier to gauge the hitbox of Script Builder's Trail, as it is literally just the blocks of the hitbox. Demon King has voice lines, and Demon King, Milestone 3, and Milestone 4 also have slightly longer kill animations. Unlike the previous examples for voice lines and the kill animation, John Doe really doesn't have anything that would be made more obvious with him getting voice lines other than the idle lines. And so that one barely even matters, even less than Jason. And the longer kill animation is very, very barely longer. It hardly even matters. So they all go into slightly pay to lose. Now, Gas Harpoon also has voice lines, but also his digital footprints are either easier or harder to see depending on the material they're placed on and the graphics quality of the people you're playing against. So, second skins go into side grade. Geometry's digital footprints are slightly harder to see, as it is just pitch black. Now, Annihilation's digital footprints are easier to see, but they do go invisible for very, very brief periods, which could trip you up, but he is also very bright. He's glowing, which is one of the examples I said did matter, so technically, he should be side grade, but I really don't think it goes invisible for like half a second at a time matters. Now, Yourself, John Doe, and you'll see me mention this again with the other Yourself skins, but it can be made either easier or harder to see depending on what your avatar is. If you have a lot of really obvious accessories that have particle effects or protrude really far out, yeah, that's pay to lose. But if your avatar is just pitch black, then you know. Poached has a glowing effect, has glowing parts on him, and has much more easily seen digital footprints. Why did I say it like that? Anyways. Our newest arrival, Noli, brings a few things to this discussion. APREX is basically all pitch black. Like, normally I wouldn't mention things that are darker, but this is pure jet black for like 90% of the skin. Again, in the end, I don't think it matters too much, but still. You Are an Idiot doesn't have voice lines, but is also a lot brighter from all angles, because the white half is glowing, so. 035 doesn't have voice lines when charging Void Rush and using Nova. Artful has a quieter Void Rush sound. I know some of you are gonna be like, well, okay, why are you even mentioning these? It doesn't matter, but like, I just want to cover all bases. If one of you say I'm mentioning these, but not things that make them harder or easier to see, I'm gonna kill you. Devesto straight up just doesn't have any voice lines for using abilities. He only has voice lines for getting a kill and getting stunned. And yourself Noli is a side grade for the same reason as yourself John Doe. Moving on.
Also Umbra Noli. I forgot about Umbra Noli. Umbra Noli also has voice lines. I forgot about them.
Now for 1X, Classic and Timeless don't have the high saturation filter that he normally has, which makes them harder to spot from far away. Now, I'll put Classic and Slightly Pay to Win right now, but I will bring up Timeless in just a bit. Voidbound, Timeless, and XX Ace of Spades XX have custom sound effects that are harder to discern either when the ability actually triggers or which ability is actually used. So, I still don't think, even with these two things combined, I don't think it's enough for Timeless to be bumped up to noticeably Pay to Win, so I'll still put him in slightly. And XX Ace of Spades is barely matters. However, Voidbound is an interesting case because in my opinion it is really hard, especially in game, to tell the difference between the unstable eye sound and the mass infection sound. They sound really similar, and that has gotten me hit by mass infection before because I thought he was using unstable eye. So I'm putting Voidbound and noticeably Pay to Win. Evil Green Skeleton is really fucking bright, like holy shit. Infernum and Darkness have an outline which makes them a lot easier to see from far away. Kind of the same case as Evil Green Skeleton, but a lot less in your face about it. I'd still say it does matter enough for it to be noticeably Pay to Lose. But like, again, I just want to reiterate, even the ones that are in like noticeably Pay to Win or Pay to Lose, in the end it doesn't really matter that much. It's just a way to discern the ones that matter slightly more from the ones that are, oh, it makes it easier for you to dodge behead. Betrayed has a faster kill animation, but also has voice lines, which allows you to dodge mainly entanglement much more easily, and allows you to tell where their minions are before you even see them. So it goes in side grade. 1X also has voice lines, but doesn't have the benefits that Betrayed has, so it goes in noticeably Pay to Lose, because I'd say it makes entanglement a lot easier to dodge, as normally entanglement has pretty much no sound cue. It's really quiet. So I think being able to react to entanglement without even needing to look back at the 1X matters enough for it to be noticeably Pay to Lose. Toon has custom zombies, and those custom zombies have glowing parts. Yourself 1X is like the other Yourself skins, but I'd say it can't really be made that much harder to see because of the high saturation filter. Even if you have a pitch black avatar, I'd say it's still pretty easy to spot. So yeah, slightly Pay to Lose. Now, Hacklord has an easier to notice mass infection and entanglement projectile, and his kill animation seems ever so slightly slower. I don't think any of these matter. The kill animation is very barely slower, and mass infection and entanglement weren't very difficult to spot in the first place, especially if you have hitboxes enabled, so slightly Pay to Lose. Now, moving on from the killers, which in hindsight I probably should have saved for last, as I'd say they're a bit more exciting, but it's too late for that now. Noob. So, Combat Dummy, Spotter, and Token are entirely or mostly composed of monochrome colors, which comparatively makes them a lot harder to see when they're using Ghost Burger. So, slightly pay to win they go. Now, it is very difficult to tell when Bloxy is using Slate Skin, as only the barely visible face at the front of the costume turns gray. Everything else just stays the same, so in the end, it is still slightly, because I don't think it matters that much. Once you, like, hit them once, or maybe, see them use the drinking animation, you could probably figure out what they're doing, but... Spiders and Retro have a hurt noise, which could help the killer track you while you're suffering from a damage over time effect. Spiders also makes a constant noise while under 50% HP. Now, I wouldn't say it matters that much. Maybe I should put them in noticeably pay to lose, but I don't think audio tracking is as significant as visual tracking, which you'll see me bring up later. But for now, I'll put anything with a hurt noise in slightly pay to lose, but I can definitely see the argument to move them all to noticeably. And noob cosplay can be extremely pay to lose if you have avatar accessories that emit particles. And also it's the same issue of you can equip accessories that make you a lot more obvious with protrusions and all that. But mainly the particle effects. So, noticeably pay to lose, but only sometimes. Moving on to Elliot, which thank God they made it so that his pizza always glows, because that makes my job a lot easier here. But first, Cashier, as you might know, throws custom items, and they have different collisions compared to the other Elliot skins, which the most notable example is the egg, which it rolls. It fucking rolls so much. So, this usually works against you, but you can take advantage of it. So it goes in side grade, although it is 99% of the time paid to lose, I'd say. I will note that Supermarket also has custom pizzas similar to Cashier, but I don't know if it's the same case for them because they don't have the egg, so I won't be ranking them. Jordan, Sally, and Retro have hurt noises, slightly paid to lose for the same reason I mentioned for the noob skins. Now I said I'd say audio tracking matters less than visual tracking. Yeah. Visual tracking. Nyan and Milestone 4 have a trail effect, which lets killers track you a lot more easily. Like, I've been able to track Milestone 4 Elliot so much more easily because of their trail. So I'd say these do go into noticeably paid to lose. Friend is a glowing bright blue, which, honestly, I'd say that's enough to put them in noticeably paid to lose. It makes you stand out so much more when most of the maps are so dark. And Gummy is the exact shade of green as the grass on Pirate Bay. So, yeah. Now, moving on to Shitzky, who, as you might know, is famous for having a lot of skins, so this should be fun. So, the following skins have some sort of accessory that, in my opinion, juts out enough to be noticeable. So, we have Modern Shitzky with the oil barrel. We have Olivia, Telemon, and Guide, who have a visible sword. We have Guardian Angel, who has wings. And last but certainly not least, 5 more Shitzkys, which, if I have to explain why 5 more Shitzkys is paid to lose, I'm going to have to ask you to go back to YouTube Kids. 5 more Shitzkys will be the second skin going and actively cucking yourself, because holy hell. Now, Memoriam makes you fucking blind if you ever get hit by Gashing Wound. So, slightly paid to lose. The Heartbroken has a custom harder to hear slash sound, and because slash is Shitzky's main ability and the sound cue does let you react to it a lot easier, I'd say this goes into noticeably paid to win. Now, Ness also has a harder to hear slash sound, as some of you might have been screaming at your screen at when I pointed out the Heartbroken, but he also has an audio cue when using fried chicken, which Shitzky normally doesn't have. So he goes into side grade. And don't worry, I didn't forget about Sunderland. It does have a harder to hear slash sound and animation, but he also has a flashlight on him, which makes him more easily seen in dark environments. So he also goes into side grade. Now, Golden might have a custom slash sound. I know he has a special sound for if he hits the killer, but I don't know if the wind-up sound is any different. So, if it is, he'll go into side grade, but otherwise he has trailing particle effects, which, similar to Milestone 4 and Nyan Elliot, I'd say matters enough for him to go into noticeably paid to lose. And also the golden skins just glow, even without the particle effects, so. Now, Retro has a significantly harder to notice slash animation. but also has a hurt sound like the other retro skins. So, side grade. And Y2K has multiple glowing accessories. Now, for guest 1337. Little Brother and Dragon Guest have sound cues when blocking, and Dragon Guest also has idle voice lines. I don't think this really matters. Slightly pay to lose. You would probably be able to react to the block either way, so. Ally that only kills zombies, not you, and Gunner have a shield, which both makes you easier to see around corners, and it's also easier to tell when you're blocking. So they both go into slightly pay to lose. No, I don't care if it's hard to tell when you're blocking below 50% HP. It's not that hard to tell the difference, and also this is my video, shut the fuck up. Bobby and Juggernaut have the combined issues of having a shield and having a block queue. Even though these are combined issues, I don't think it matters enough for it to be bumped down a tier, so. Swashbuckler has a sound cue when you're using Punch. Now, I know default Punch already has a sound cue, but let's be real, the sound cue is so quiet that most of you probably didn't even know it did have one. Sun and Sorcerer, especially Sorcerer, have very flashy visual effects when you're winding up a punch on top of a sound cue. These matter a lot more than the block sounds, I think. It is very noticeable, so noticeably pay to lose. Milestone 3, Milestone 4, and Greenbelt have more obvious block and parry animations, but I don't think it matters that much in the end for the same reason as the shield guys, so slightly pay to lose, they all go. No, I don't care if Milestone's block animation looks like the virtual insanity emote. I swear to fucking god if any of you comment about that or Housefly. And finally for guest skins, Ultra has a louder sound cue when landing a block, as well as having very noticeable wings. The wings matter more than the block sound, but you know. Now Two Time, who does have a way to apply invisibility to themselves, but because Two Time already is monochrome, I'll instead list all skins that aren't mostly monochrome, the opposite of what I did for Noob. So, these are Double Life for the first life, Soulmates, Dr. Ludwig for the first life, Monitoring for the second life, Jester, Celeste, Ghost Detective, Tazuna, Spring, and Artist. Now, Princess and Snowtime are entirely white, which is usually, but not always, detrimental, so I'll put them in side grade. Phoenix, on top of being colorful, has a fire ring around them in their second life. Blossom has trailing particle effects in their second life, as well as being colorful. Again, trailing particle effects, in my opinion, if they're noticeable, matters a lot. So, noticeably pay to lose. Ghoul is colorful, has a fire effect, which is really easy to see, and has very slight trailing particles. So, noticeably pay to lose. Silverthorn has glowing antlers, Yorick glows in their second life, and Legacy Milestone 4 has a glowing halo. I'll put Silverthorn and slightly pay to lose as the antlers are very small, but Yorick and Legacy do go unnoticeably. Philosopher has a hurt sound. Moving on. Ghost has quieter stab sounds. Now for 007 and 7, and let's just get this out of the way right now. Agent, Yumi, Son of Man, Anonymous, Cecil, Idiot, and especially Dummy. All of these are mostly monochrome, and Dummy especially is able to hide very effectively while cloning. And the reason I'm putting them all in noticeably pay to win is because Clone is 007's main ability, and because of that, it's on a very low cooldown. So this matters a lot. Now, Magic Ninja is also mostly monochrome, but also has a harder to hear cool GUI sound, as instead of the buzzing that gets progressively louder, it's a beeping that only gets faster. So, noticeably pay to win. Arguably around the same level as Dummy. Spy's voice lines when set on fire, who cares? 6W6's antlers and hat do jut out a bit. I know I said it wasn't including hats, but I'm more so talking about the antlers here, so. And Divey does tutorials 33, Scripter, and Suspicious Man all have hurt sounds. Now Builderman, we're almost there. If you happen to accidentally say a woo or a whoa with the blue screen of death skin equipped, you will fucking die. Now obviously this is circumvented by just not saying that, but it is technically a disadvantage that no other skin has, so Bob, Cat Rocker, Retro, Punk, and Oh-No's, like the other retro skins, have hurt sounds, but also their construction sound when placing a building is slightly more muffled and harder to hear, so they will all go in side grade. Milestone 4 is constantly holding on a hammer, which juts out, so. Engineer has voice lines when placing a building, when a building is destroyed, and when burning, which can matter, but I've only had it matter like twice ever, so. Now for Duskar, Loveshot has custom sounds when using her abilities, and they are slightly easier to hear. Flies of the Lord also has custom sounds, but also has a special spawn protection GUI that does make it slightly harder to track as shielded survivor. In the end, it really shouldn't matter that much, so he will still go and slightly pay to lose. Now, normally Duskar, being a jack-o'-lantern, has a glow from inside his pumpkin. Scarecrow and Toothy Deer don't have that glow, so it is slight advantage. Marvin and Plush Sakar also don't have the glow, but they do have hurt sounds, so they go into side grade. 2009 not only has hurt sounds, but it also has a trailing fire effect, which is really, really easy to see. And not only is this a trailing fire effect, letting the killer track you much more easily, but the fire effect makes you basically unable to see in first person, which makes it a lot harder to use Plasma Beam, the ability you're going to be using a lot because of how low the cooldown is. So, because of all of these things combined, I'd say 2009 Duskar is the third skin to go into actively cucking yourself. Okay, so apparently, and I didn't find this out until I was trying to get footage for the skin, because I don't use the skin, and I've never seen anyone that has used the skin. They changed the fire effect for it. So, most of what I just said doesn't matter, and the only thing that does matter is that it's easier to see it from other angles, so it goes into slightly pay to lose. So technically the thumbnail isn't clickbait, but yeah, I did find that out after telling Rush to put 2009 Duskar on the thumbnail, so my apologies. Now Golden also has a trailing particle effect. In Milestone 3 and Milestone 4 have glowing horns, who cares? Some of you might say, oh, but their face already glows, but I mean, you can see them from a different angle. I don't know. I'm running out of things to say, dude. For our second last survivor, Taff, Ninja and Y2K are almost entirely black, which, because he has the Trip Mine ability, this enables him to take advantage of it much more, and this is one of his main abilities, so I say these go into noticeably pay to win. Now, the Dark Reaper is similar in that he's also mostly black, but his Trip Mine placement and reveal sounds last longer than the normal Trip Mines, so side grade. Schmuck's Trip Mines have quieter reveal noises and don't emit a glow. I'd say this matters quite a bit, so that goes into noticeably pay to win. Gratimio, Plash, and Zeke the H-Bomb have hurt sounds. You know the deal. Moving on! Anomaly 0010 has a shorter Trip Mine reveal sound, but also has more obvious tripwire spikes, so he'll go into side grade. Now finally we're at the end with Chance. So Jeff and Flipnote have custom coin flip sounds that are easier to hear and easier to tell whether or not they land on heads or tails. Flipnote especially, but even with Flipnote, I don't think it matters too much, so they'll both only go into slightly pay to lose. Now, this is something that hardly ever matters, but I will still mention it. Pico and the Milestone skins have physical heads and tail sides on their coin flip, which lets you react to what you're going to get before the result actually registers. So, technically, slightly pay to win, but I'm really stretching it there. I'm not putting Milestone 3 and 4 there yet, because they also have a custom shooting animation, which is also easier to react to if they start the windup for shooting it while they're facing away from you. So, those two will go into side grade. Okay, so apparently, because Milestone 3 and Milestone 4 Chance have a custom flipping animation, the coin will always visually land on the tail side, even if it gives heads. That sounded weird. But, yeah, the coin will always flip on the tail side visually, even if the effect it gives is the charges. So, those two should be going to slightly pay to lose. But the coin does still visually land on either heads or tails, depending on what you're going to get for Milestone 1 and 2. Now, MLG Chance similarly has a custom shooting animation that's easier to notice, but they also have a sound cue that plays before they shoot, Yes, I know the regular gun has like the click, but like, come on, shut up. They also have very small trailing particles, but the sound cue that plays before they shoot, I think, is definitely the biggest problem here. Noticeably pay to lose. Golden Chance has trailing particle effects. Plushy and Retro have hurt noises, you know the deal, yada yada. Ultra Kill Chance has very noticeable wings, slightly pay to lose. And finally, which unfortunately we're going to have to end on a bit of an uninteresting note because of how the skins are ordered, but Mirror Chance is a very similar shade to certain walls and rocks. And there we go, that's the tier list. If there's anything I missed or you think I should have mentioned, do bring it up, and I'll either tell you that I'm stupid and forgot that existed, or I'll explain to you why I didn't include it. If you stayed this far from my schizophrenic ramblings, please like, subscribe, and all that stuff that YouTubers say or whatever. And I have a Discord server, and the link will probably be in the description, so you should go join that. Alright. See ya.